want to say thank you to all the new subscribers to the channel. I've been really busy this last couple months, really, with work, home life, and stuff like that. Had some sickness going on. Sickness continues to go on amongst the family and stuff. So it's been busy. I know I've probably been slacking on videos, and I've probably been slacking on answering comments and emails and stuff, but trust me, I will get to them. It's just been interesting times here at the end of the year, plus the holidays. But we will get you. Don't worry. Thank you to all the new subscribers, and thank you to all the subscribers who stuck with us through these last couple years. It's been an amazing journey. Cannot wait to see what the next few years holds. Alrighty guys, welcome to a lovely day here at the Saw Shop. Today, I wanted to bring y'all to the bench. Let's look and let's talk about a few carburetors. How can you look at a carburetor and determine what nipple is what? Why some have two, why some have one, why some have three. I think we got the bases covered here. So let's bring y'all in. Let's take a look at these. Looking at some of these carburetors, this is a Tillotson carb. And these are just some Tillotson clones of the same carburetor. And if you can notice on this one, it only has one fuel fitting on the carburetor. If it only has one fuel fitting on the carburetor, that's going to be your fuel line. So, a lot of these carbs, your fuel pump side is only going to have one screw holding it on. And a lot of times you'll see these little vent holes drilled into it. That way atmospheric pressure can help the pump. The other side of the carburetor, it's usually got 4 bolts in it. Typically only one hole. This is your fuel metering side. This is what controls how much fuel actually flows through the carburetor. How these pump, if you look on one side or the other, a lot of times you'll find this little hole, and it's drilled a passage in, and pulse from the crankcase gets in, and that's what actually pumps. Pressure and vacuum, pressure, vacuum is what pumps the fuel through. So that's pretty much the one barb setup carburetors. Now these two are 372 carburetors, both clones. They're made a little different, but pretty much exactly the same. These are HD style carbs. This is for a smaller saw. It is actually still an HD style Walbro. And this one is for a Steel MS460. And it is also a HD style carb. Now let's look at the differences with HD style. So if you look at the 372 carburetor, you'll notice you have 2 places for a line to go. There's no hole drilled around the outside for a pulse. So you have to assume one of these is your pulse line. And if you look and tell, this fitting is barbed. You can look here, it looks the same, a single screw. You can look and see you can see your diaphragm and your gasket. And this barbed fuel nipple is on that side of the carb. Flip it over, you got this metering chamber. And that just allows, that little hole allows atmospheric pressure in and out. So it pumps. So, after looking at all that, you can assume barbed fitting on the pump side. That's going to be your fuel line. So this would have to be your impulse. Now the steel versions differ a little bit. They still look the same. They're set up the same for the most part. But where Husky brings the pulse in through the side of the carburetor into the fuel pump chamber, Steel just took this spot on the top, added a fitting in it, and that's where the pulse comes into your fuel pump. So single screw on you get your 2 atmospheric vents. This line is not barbed, but still on the pump side, so that will be your fuel inlet line. There is a hole there, but it's blocked off. So this would have to be your impulse line. This would be your metering chamber, which is what this is. But Steel uses a setup where this is called a compensator. Instead of letting atmospheric pressure determine, how much your metering diaphragm pumps and allows so much fuel in, it runs through the air filter. And as the air filter clogs up, this compensator has a harder time pulling air through it. So it will not let the metering diaphragm pump as much. And it'll keep your saw running at an optimal air-fuel ratio for a little bit longer as the filter stops up. So that's what that's for. Whereas these, if your air filter stops up, it's just going to run pig rich. Now this is a HD style also. This is from the Neotech and Husky 543s, 843s. So you notice this one has 3 fittings around it. So most of the time, your choke side, you won't have any hole. Your throttle butterfly side that goes to the engine, there will usually be a pulse hole at the top here or at the bottom. So that doesn't have it. And we have 3 lines. Single screw, you can see your pump diaphragm in there. So this is your fuel pump side. So this would be your fuel inlet. This will be the pulse that pumps the fuel. And this is actually for a purge valve. So your fuel line would hook here. The suction side of your purge valve would hook to here, and it would suck fuel out the tank through here, in the carb, out of here, and back to tank. So that would be your purge, impulse, and fuel line. This has the metering chamber with just the atmospheric hole in it. No compensator on this one. Steel is about the only brand that I've seen that does the compensators. I'm sure there's a couple other ones around also. These are Steel MS660 clone carbs. One is HLIC, HLHIC, HLIC, Hylac, whatever. And this is just a cheap Amazon beater that I bought to do some testing with. But notice, just like the steel 046 carb, these have compensators. And the compensator is always the metering side, not the pump side. So if you flip these over, notice this fuel pump side has 4 screws that hold it on. That's because the bigger the carbs get, the more screws that's needed for the bigger gasket, bigger surface area. But you still have your 2 atmospheric holes for the pump to operate correctly. You have 2 barbed fittings. This barb fitting's a little bigger than this one. This is your throttle butterfly side that sits against the engine. It does not have a pulse hole on it, so you have to assume one of these lines is for your impulse. Now, fuel line's never going to be in the top of the carb. There is a few instances where it is, I think, but most of the time, no. So on the side, this would be your fuel line. This would be your impulse. And compensator, same way. It meters how much fuel goes through the carburetor. And as the air filter gets stopped up, it limits how much fuel the carburetor sends. So that way it runs a little bit more optimal for a little bit longer. This is one of the rare instances where there is 4 screws on the metering side and 4 on the pump side. But always going to have a fitting right beside your pump side on a carburetor. This is an old Walbro, I think it's, SDC. 4 screws. 4 screws, but you can tell this side is your metering chamber. This one's pretty big, so it's got quite a few holes for atmospheric pressure to get in. Only one jet, a capped off high jet, because it has a fixed high jet, adjustable low. So you can look and tell this is your metering side. This would be your fuel pump side. It does have a vent hole. And there's a barbed fitting beside of it, so this would be your fuel line. It does not need an impulse from the top cap above the pump, because if you look on your butterfly side, you can see there that there is your impulse hole. So that pulse hole is drilled in to up here, and that's what pumps as the piston goes up and down. Pretty much all these are the same Walbro WAs, WTs, and WATs, and a HDA here. These are all pretty much the same. They all have a pulse hole on your butterfly side for your pulse, and a fuel fitting on your fuel pump side. So fuel line, and the pulse comes through the intake block. And you can flip it over and see there's your metering chamber. with a little vent hole. But these they do not have a vent hole cut in. Not 100% sure why they didn't do it. I assume they just allow the pulse hole to work the pump, and it works. So it works. This is pretty much the same setup. It just has a fuel nipple turned the opposite way for a little different style intake setup. But works the same. Fuel pump side, fuel fitting, metering chamber. Now the Walbro HDA. As you can see, we're on the choke side. We'll flip it over to the butterfly side. No hole. So the pulse has to come from up top. So now you're left with this fitting and this one. Like I said, most time, 9.9 out of 10 times, your fuel line's not going to be on the top cap. You can tell this is your fuel pump side. This would be your fuel nipple. And this is your pulse. And that's the same for both of these. They just have different style fittings in them, but they work the same. Not a lot of information on carburetors, but that's a lot of information on carburetors. Hopefully now you could be able to look at your carburetor and use the clues that the carburetor gives you to figure out an idea of what fitting is what and which way it needs to be hooked up. A lot of them's pretty self-explanatory, especially like the steels. It's got the molded pulse line that comes through the intake. So when you slip this on, these nipples just automatically hook into the pulse, so you don't really have to worry about it, and all you have to worry about hooking up your fuel line. Like I said, this doesn't even scratch the surface on the different styles of carburetors, but it's the ones that I have here that I can show you. And hopefully now you'll be able to look and identify a little bit better, a little bit clearer what is what on a carburetor. You'll know which side is the pump side, which side is your metering side, and be able to, I guess, make assessments and make some good judgment calls on what's what. So yeah, you guys let me know what you think about this. Let me know if I missed anything, if there's anything else you need to know, and we'll definitely come back out here, try to hop in and get a video together with some little bit of explaining done. Hope this makes your life a little bit easier next time when you look at a carburetor. Don't be so scared of them. They're nothing but little bitty pieces of aggravating engineering. I can tell you that. A lot can go wrong inside these little things, but there's not a lot to the little things either. So I will say, when you start having car problems, diaphragms getting hard, getting crunchy, these little vent holes getting stopped up with sawdust and dirt, and your inlet screen on your fuel side, pretty much every carburetor on the fuel inlet side is going to have a fuel inlet screen inside of it. So check that, make sure it isn't stopped up. I think next time you'll be a little bit more confident going into a carburetor issue to determine whether it is or whether it isn't. So a lot of these older carbs, You can get in here and you can look and tell. This is your fuel inlet side. It comes in, goes to your fuel screen. But on the opposite side, you can actually remove the circuit plate and see all the passages and where all of them go. A lot of the newer carburetors, they do not have the circuit plate that can be removed. They only have Welch plugs that's drove in and glued in. So you really can't get to all these little fancy circuits without having the right tools to go inside and make modifications to them. But to make modifications to them, to run alternate fuels and stuff like that, you need to be able to get in here to these circuits and drill these little bitty holes out to specific sizes to run some of the funny stuff. You guys have a great upcoming weekend. Let me know if this helped anybody. Y'all have a good one. Come back and see us next time on Dub's Saw Shop. There's no telling what we may be into. Dubs, we out.